I've had so many more opportunities here in Asia than I did in New York or Los Angeles. There's not a bias against Asians. In the US, my mother is afraid to leave the house because they're like pushing so many old Asian women down in the streets, right? In New York, they push someone into the subway, right? So there's none of that prejudice here. If you can come and actually integrate and bring skills, and if you can bring out the best in the team, to me, the opportunities are endless, right? I came with like a 1 year old not knowing what to do. And now I've done 3 startups.
Hi, Rosaline. Thanks for joining me today on the Borderless podcast. Really great you
A
could,
pleasure.
join me today. I think there's a whole bunch of topics I want to get into, as I was just talking about just then around, Asians born in the West, moving back to Asia for the career opportunities, and obviously yourself and, your own journey as an entrepreneur. So maybe just to start off, maybe just give an introduction to who you are and what you do.
My name is Rosaline Chow, and I am the founder and CEO of InsurTech called CXA.
Maybe give the audience a bit of a background to your upbringing in the States. And
Mm,
it's actually quite interesting, just given it sounds like it was quite a hectic, chaotic childhood. So maybe just bring us through that journey.
yeah, yeah. So I was born in San Francisco. Um, my father was an illegal immigrant from China who hid in Chinatown for 40 years. And, if he does that now, he landed through Mexico, he would be sent back to Mexico. um, my mother got to San Francisco during the Communist Revolution because the communists took away all her family's property, put her mother into labor camp. And so my mother left 2 daughters behind in China and went to Hong Kong to make money for the family, and happened to meet my dad, who was there because when he was 59, he gave himself up for amnesty and decided he wanted to have children. And there were no Chinese women in Chinatown, San Francisco at the time, that were marriageable. So we met my mother, but she never told him about the 2 daughters. So they get married in Hong Kong. They moved to San Francisco. Um, we all moved to Los Angeles. And after my 2 brothers are born, my mother tells my father, I was married. I have 2 children. Can you sponsor them? She felt safe because they had sons by then. And my sisters migrated from China, but when they got to Los Angeles, where we were living, it was the middle of the Watts riots. The only property my parents, who were both illiterate, could afford in Los Angeles was in the middle of the ghetto. And we were the one Chinese family. And so during the riots, where for 6 days, the National Guard came in. My dad was outside with the police, keeping the rioters away from our house because everyone picks on the minority, and we were the minority. So my sisters wanted to go back to China because it didn't feel like a land of opportunity. But they had to run away from their school because the school bus were burning, houses were burning, businesses were burning. And so I grew up bullied a lot. I learned to run really fast because you get less bullied if you can run away. And so, yeah, that's how I grew up. We grew up, like you said, in chaos.
I'm wondering, in terms of like a lot of migrant kids have similar experiences. Do you think that chaotic upbringing has contributed to the success you have today? Being able to deal with the pressure and uncertainty.
Yes, yes, I agree. Because what's the fear of failure versus the fear of disfigurement and dismemberment? It's all relative, right? So and you grow up kind of tough in those environments. So if you're used to fighting, I mean, what's talking? So yeah, my mom is obviously tough. My dad is tough, right? And the kids grew up as zealots. When you're in that environment, we're all zealots.
Do you have children of yourself, like yourself?
Yes, 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 yes. I have wimpy children. So I have a 26-year-old and a 24-year-old who grew up in Singapore in a very protective environment with tough parents, but my kids, um, so yeah, nature and nurture, right? Same genes, but our nurturing environment is very different. So they have the same values, but they didn't have to fight for their lives. My husband, my husband grew up in Newark, right? With nunchucks and the riots, happened in Newark, right? And so it's the same.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, for people around my age, even younger, some of us actually born in a non so very safe environment, helicopter parents and so forth, tiger parents. So it's just interesting to see how in one generation things can. I'm not saying that we are a bit softer. I am gonna call it out here. But yeah, it's just interesting to see how things can change so quickly in one generation. So in terms of instilling, again, this is a bit off topic, but again, instilling the sort of values within your children in terms of being able to persevere and so forth. Is that something you actively think about, or is it just too hard with the nature component?
No, we talk about it a lot, right? How to how to persevere through tough times. Um, what to do to get yourself mentally ready, right? With the pressure, ways to relieve pressure, right? So yeah, no, I talk to my kids about this a lot.
Right. And going back to your move from the US to Singapore to Asia, maybe just bring us through that journey.
Yeah, so by I was in banking in New York, and my husband was in a consulting firm in New York. We were asked to move to London, so I found a job with my bank. But the day the movers came, his company said, "No, you're moving to Singapore, not London." So we had a lease, got rid of the lease. I bought a lot of winter clothes for my daughter because London's really expensive. She's one, right? So it's like no use for winter clothes in Singapore. And so we moved here unexpectedly 25 years ago. And of course, I didn't have a job because I've never been here before. And so, yeah, 25 years ago, I moved here unexpectedly.
Great. And then bring us through that journey through entrepreneurship, because you didn't start entrepreneurship um, that early. Is that right?
Yes, yes. So I moved here in 96. In 1999, it was the dot com.
Hmm.
And one of my old friends from UCLA started a dot com, and I invested. And I drove up to see how my money was doing to KL from Singapore. And I decided I will help launch him, right? Because he's great at selling. I'm very operational from my years of experience. So I launched him, and then Bain Capital saw me and said, "Hey, how would you like to build a giant startup?" Right? We're super well funded. And so I launched them too. So I launched two startups between 99 and 2001 during the dot com.
Gotcha. And then obviously those after the dot com bust, obviously that didn't work out too well for you. But then what gave you the motivation to keep going and obviously found CXA?
Um, so the reason I stopped in 2001 wasn't because of the bus. It was because I discovered my daughter had epilepsy and a learning disorder. And I was living in KL on weekdays and only home on weekends. So um, you can imagine the guilt of a mother building two startups in another country while her babies, on the weekdays. I moved my mother from Los Angeles to take care of them.
Wow.
And so I moved to insurance. One of my clients from my startup was an insurance company. And I discovered when I entered the insurance industry after banking and tech was that it was 50 years behind. There was no technology. And so after I started running Chubb and Mercer, I tried to convince Mercer to actually invest 10 million in technology in Asia, because I grew Mercer 800% from like 30 years of like no growth. Suddenly we grew 800% hyper growth. And I figured out all the client pain points, but we needed technology to fix them. So I tried to convince them to do it, but 5 years of begging, they said no, right? So I finally took my own 10 million and built CXA to fix it myself.
Wow.
But I waited until my daughter was applying for college in the US, right? And so the guilt of a mother lasted until she was 18. And that's when I decided, okay, now I'm going to do it, right? But with my own money.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a problem that needed to be solved. And I thought I could solve it, but you need technology to actually fix and digitize. But I also thought it shouldn't be about insurance. One of my biggest clients in China told me, look, we bought insurance from you, but you know what? We discovered too many late stage cancers. It's too late. Why can't someone connect the health screening, because we pay for health screening for all our employees, and detect the disease early and help people manage it instead of just paying for something when it's too late? So that's why I started up CXA. You have to connect, health is complex. Early detection, disease management, right? Wellness, so all of it. So, and insurance to pay for it, just in case, right? It has to be about prevention and treatment. That's why I started CXA. And so, yeah, but I waited till my daughter was ready. And you know what? She overcame her epilepsy and her learning disorder. She got into Tufts, graduated computer science. She went to Microsoft in Seattle.
Wow. No, that's an
So,
amazing story.
yeah.
No, it's really great to hear. Maybe actually, this is probably a good time to actually explain to the audience what exactly is CXA and I guess how that's evolved over the years.
Oh, yeah. So I started out building insurance brokers because the insurance companies were not ready. So I help Fortune 500 companies, to use their insurance money and let their employees decide, do I want to use it just for insurance? Could I use my husband's money or my spouse's money, pay for all the health care, right? Because the employers pay, and use the rest for early detection and mental health, for dentists, for my parents, right? So how do you use the same money to pay for everything, right? And not just sick care, pay for health care. So during COVID, no one wanted to see a broker, right? Everyone was locked up. And so I sold my brokerage, but by then I already helped HSBC build a platform for their insurance company to cross-sell their SMEs in their bank. And they won 200 companies within 6 months, even though no one was in the branches and no one wanted to see an agent. It was a digital platform. We onboarded 80,000 users within 6 months.
Wow.
With our platform. And so I sold off all my brokerage, and now I help insurance companies and their bank partners, payroll partners do this for all of their SMEs and all the employees of the SMEs. So It's a very sustainable model. Instead of me chasing everyone, they already have captive clients. They have hundreds of thousands of SMEs. Each SME, let's say, has between 10 and 100 people. Can you imagine how big this can become?
Right.
Every country, right? Insurance should incorporate wellness, right? So for the same money, if you can pay for both, who wouldn't want that?
Gotcha. That makes sense. And in terms of CXA itself, would you still consider it a startup? Like, what stage is it at now from when it started versus now?
So we're about to be acquired.
Oh wow.
Um,
Okay.
we're in the
Congrats.
middle of
Yeah.
due diligence. But what's neat is we're being acquired by a company that combats chronic disease. They work in Australia and the UK, and they work with the national health systems so that they have the data. If you have diabetes and hypertension and obesity, what should you do, right? And where should you get care? So if that combines with CXA, where we capture the data, can you imagine what we can do to combat chronic disease using insurance money instead of waiting until it's too late? So we think that combination is powerful.
And just in regards, I want to sort of bring the topic back to Asia and in regards to obviously we talk a lot about the Asian century and so forth. Obviously, you moved to Singapore, not so much not so much for that, but I was just wondering what your thoughts are about building a business in a country that's not your own, and obviously expanding throughout Asia. Maybe just bring us through that journey as well.
Yeah, so it's very different being in Asia from the West. Very different because I worked in New York, I worked in Los Angeles. Being in Asia, the culture is different, and you can't come in as the ugly American or the ugly Australian or the ugly European thinking you know it all. So, but you can bring skills. So to me, I've had so many more opportunities here in Asia than I did in New York or Los Angeles. So many more because there's not a bias against Asians. In the US, my mother is afraid to leave the house because they're like pushing so many old Asian women down in the streets,
Mm.
right? In New York, they push someone into the subway,
Yeah,
right?
it's
So
like attack
there's
every week
no
from what I see. So it's
yeah, so
crazy.
it's
Yeah.
it's there were 200 women who were followed to their homes in San Jose, and they they got mobbed, right? So look, it's there's none of that prejudice here. What if you're part of, you look like everybody else? And if you can come and actually integrate and bring skills, and if you can bring out the best in the team, to me, um, the opportunities are endless, right? I came with like a 1 year old not knowing what to do. And now I've done 3 startups, right? So um, I had in Mercer, I used to run 14 countries. Um, Japan was one of my countries. I had to learn how, even though I was female, American, and Chinese, 3 strikes against me, how to win everyone over, right? And how to get the Koreans and the Japanese and the Australians and the Indians, Malaysians, the Chinese, the honkies, the Singaporeans to work together, right? From never growing in 30 years to grow 800%, right? So I think if you can have the skills and be open-minded and learn each culture, because each culture is so different, but get everyone on the same mission. People work so hard in Asia. And then if you instill a purpose and a mission to work together to build something that's never been built before, I think it's enormous, right? You have the right work ethics here and the growth opportunities.
Mm, agreed. I often talk about, I see a lot of Asian Australians, Asian Americans, a lot of them are, I would say, inherently able to manage cross-cultural situations, just given you're born in a country, you might be bilingual, even trilingual. Sorry, you're born in a country that's, where you're a minority, so you naturally have that empathy, but also you may be bilingual or trilingual, you understand, both cultures, both East and West, so I sort of see, um, a lot of Asian Americans or whatever having that sort of skill set, but when they're working in corporate within the West, I don't see them using those skills at all, or they're not put into positions where they can utilize those cross cultural capabilities. That's I don't know if that I don't know if you agree with that, but just something
I
I've
agree with
noticed.
that.
Yeah,
I agree with that because if you're in a deep minority, right, and there's certain biases against you, right? Here's a smart, quiet kid.
yeah,
Let's give him all the work. Um, versus here, where you can rise to leadership roles, right? As long as you're not the know it all,
mm,
right? There's a certain group of Western Asian born, Asians that come here thinking they know it all. I mean,
mm,
you'll just be squashed.
yeah,
You really will be crushed, right? They won't do it in your face, but the passive aggressiveness will just crush you,
mm,
right? But if you come in understanding that just because someone doesn't speak English well doesn't mean they're not smarter than you,
mm,
right? There's just so many skilled, smart, hardworking people here. And if you can leverage that, I just think I'm not sure I'll ever leave, right?
mm,
Asia, I think there's more opportunities for me. I think I actually would love to persuade my kids to come back instead of working in the US.
mm,
Come back to Asia. But I'm not sure they have the drive. So it really depends if you have the drive, right?
yeah.
Here are the opportunities without the biases.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a chat to another Asian American in regards to opportunities in Asia. Like they were considering moving to, obviously before COVID, they were looking at China, the growing industries there in Asia, within Southeast Asia as well. But then he sort of at the back of his mind, I don't know whether it's just through brainwashing or the media, like he felt that he could get a high wage and I'm not sure about maybe less hours in the States itself rather than having to make that jump to Asia and, obviously navigating a new environment and so forth. So, but yeah, you're right. In terms of that, it probably depends heavily on the person as well and what they want.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I mean, you could definitely get higher salaries in the US, but if you want to build your own business, where's a better opportunity
No,
if you
agreed.
look at the two?
Agreed. Um, the next question I had is in regards to obviously you're both female, Asian, and you mentioned before that you had to deal, with many different countries and East Asia, dealing with the Japanese and Koreans and Chinese and so forth. How do you rise up and beat that?
So the only way you can rise up is you have to understand each country deeply, right? Where they are, but also come with ideas on how do we help you grow, right? So, what's the win win for everyone? Because, I mean, if I'm not helpful, if I can't help them grow, they're just going to ignore me, right? It's not helpful at all. But if I can find a way for us all to win together, right? How do we double your growth every single year? when the normal growth rate is like 5%, but
Mm,
how do we grow 100% every year? And if you can do that, then everyone's going to be on your side, right? So that's what happened. I help all the countries double their growth every single year. And no one's going to say no to that.
yeah,
So you have to bring something to the table,
gotcha.
right? And so with the Chinese, I mean, I had to win their respect because I don't speak Mandarin. And if I'm a Chinese face without speaking Mandarin, it's shameful, right?
Yeah.
It's really shameful. But if I can build and make China grow faster than ever, then I bring something. And I still have a Chinese team. I have a lot of people in China still. In different countries, if you can start doing some things and it immediately makes money, right? Then you can replicate it in other countries. So we built up so much momentum of growing, using the same number of people, right? So without investments, right? Just sheer brute force, just figuring out what are these pain points that clients really have and how can you just take clients away from all the competitors, right? Same people, just a different leader, right? So if you can do that and keep growing and growing and growing, right? And then using some of that growth and revenues to invest in doing new things, right? So the only thing missing was tech, right? That's the multiplier that I couldn't convince them because they said, look, we're in insurance. There's no need for tech, right? Just throw more humans. What kind of scale is that, right? It's not sustainable. So yeah, so it's bringing value.
Yeah. I was going to mention my next question was actually on that topic, was actually going to be around, obviously yesterday was International Women's Day. My next question was actually going to be around, you know, especially for people that were in a similar position to you, young female, Asian, potential leaders in the future. Like, how do they break that glass and bamboo ceiling? And obviously, we've mentioned a pretty good point already, like, bringing extreme value. But is there anything else you would give advice in terms of those aspiring leaders, and especially if they're female and Asian?
They have to break out of a mode. I mean, I was lucky. I grew up in the US, so you're more vocal when you grow up in the US. Just like Australia, you just learn to be more vocal. And so the only way to break out is to really volunteer for the opportunities and show. You have to just prove it, right? Prove that you can get things done. Prove that you can transform an organization. Prove that you can grow the top line and cut the bottom line, right? So prove that you can build new products that work. So to me, it's not based on talking, it's based on action. And then once you have that action, right, asking for the next opportunity instead of holding back, right? So, but I believe that if you can show that you are the go-to person, right? They're going to give you all the opportunities because they want someone they can trust to build the next product, to open the next country.
Again, just going on this topic about entrepreneurship and so forth, was this something you think you were born with in terms of, the perfect combination of whatever you have, the internal and external environments? Do you always consider yourself an entrepreneur, or was this something that came a bit
No,
later?
it was an accidental journey. I just got frustrated. I am the fastest growing part of the whole world. I'm part of the operating committee in New York at this firm, right? And you don't give me $10 million, right?
Yeah.
So, and in 1999, it's like I invested my money, but it's like, oh, I'm going to lose all my money if I don't launch him. so, yeah, no, it was an accidental journey. I never meant to be an entrepreneur. I just have this drive to fix things. And if you don't give me the funds to do it, and I know I can, I will do it myself. Right. So, yeah, I never meant to be, but I love it because I like to make these decisions because I think I can figure it out.
Gotcha. So I guess the next question I had was around passion, and that's an overused term nowadays. It seems like your passion, you didn't have a specific passion. Your passion is more directly at fixing and solving problems. Does that sound right?
Yes, yes. So if I think I can solve this problem, right, that insurance only pays for treatment instead of like prevention, it's like, this is a global issue, right? And if I can figure out how to solve that and it only costs me all my savings, why wouldn't I do it? Yeah. So I do feel very purpose driven, but I didn't start out purpose driven. I was just trying to get out of the ghetto. Right. And
Yeah.
then you find purpose along the way. And then luckily, I built up so many skills out of school. And then my first job, I mean, my second job, right? I went to Procter and Gamble and I learned how to manage at 21. Um, then I went to Bankers Trust, and for 8 years, I had 8 jobs. So I had to learn so many things. So luckily, I had so many skills in transformation or building something from scratch. So I only took 2 types of assignments, right? This place is shit, it's a mess. Can you fix it and turn it to hypergrowth? Or we're thinking about this. Can you create from nothing? Right. And in those 2 environments, if you could do that, you can bring those skills anywhere. And if you can bring people along the journey to help you, because you can't do it by yourself, then you find out you can build your own company. I mean, I just discovered I could build my own. I didn't know.
No, it's great to hear. I think there's a lot of people, especially like they worry about their age. Is like, oh, I don't want to leave the stable job, or I'm gonna have a kid soon. I want to just take it easy, or whatever it is. So, but
Look, I'm 60, right? And I'm selling my company. People want me to go build their new companies. I don't know. I'm still like running my company, right? So I actually think it's not age, it's mindset. Are you ready to take a leap? Or are you ready just at least move out of your comfort zone to learn new skills so you can do something more?
Gotcha.
Right? So it's really, to me, it's more mental than it is real.
Gotcha. And is this something you do, like in terms of being a leader, being an entrepreneur, and so forth? Is this something you're going to do for the rest of your life? Do you like?
Yes.
Okay, so you don't envision ideas of retiring or taking it easy.
No.
You're just so driven to purpose driven. So that's what drives you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it could be, philanthropy. It could be social impact, but I think I'll always be doing something because it's really fun. It's actually fun, right? It's the thrill of the chase.
Just moving back to a bit about Asia again, and when you first started there, the environments. We touched a bit upon like the environments and obviously how you've managed them. But for maybe people thinking of a similar move, moving to Asia and so forth, maybe we'll start off with the biggest cultural learnings, like the biggest cultural shocks in both working environment and your personal lives when you did make the move.
So when I first got here, and I was at home with my 1-year-old, and people kept coming to the door, like the plumber, and asking for Mr. Koo.
Mm.
I'm like, he's really busy. I think he's in Taiwan today, but you can ask me. I can help you, like tell you what the plumbing issue is. So there's still this patriarchy, right, in Asia. So I learned that you have to earn your respect. I'm not entitled to anything. I have to earn my respect, right? Every which way, right? So that really helped. The level of risk taking is lower here than when I was in San Francisco or New York. Getting people on board to take hard decisions is hard. So sometimes you're the only one taking hard decisions. People are less direct. So I don't always get feedback. They just talk behind your back. So you may never know what's going on. So you really have to have a pulse on the ground and meet people at different levels, and really get to know people. Um, Relationships matter more, right? Relationships matter a lot. So you need to build relationships in different cultures and earn not just respect, but trust. People have to trust you.
Mm.
So the level of initiative is less in some countries. Um, and the cultures are completely different, right? So you have an open mind and really listen, like really listen and understand what's the intent behind the words.
Mm.
So it's a culture shock. But if you can integrate to the culture shock and learn, right, then it's great.
And when you moved to Singapore, do you feel immediately, obviously besides those culture shocks, do you feel a sense of familiarity just being surrounded with people who are that look similar?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I just went back to Los Angeles and San Francisco over Christmas,
Mm.
and it felt strange seeing so many non-Asians everywhere,
Yeah.
right? It's like, oh my God, I'm different,
Yeah.
right? Whereas here you don't feel that.
Yeah. And you mentioned you want to stay in Asia for the foreseeable future, at least. Is there a reason why? Obviously, besides growing, doing anything entrepreneurial and so forth. Is there anything about, is there certain things about living in, Singapore versus LA that attracts you still?
Yeah, so I still like the safety. I still think I will have less opportunities if I go back at 60
Mm.
to San Francisco versus staying here at 60 here.
Gotcha.
So my husband wants to move back soon to our house in San Francisco, but I can see commuting between the West Coast and here because my family's still on the West Coast. Um, Only because I just think there are many more opportunities for me personally.
Mm. Gotcha.
Whereas I'm unknown in San Francisco.
Yep.
And I have a network here now. I've built up my network here.
Are you seeing companies moving into Asia, or is it still, are they still not tapping into that opportunity?
I think in terms of financial services, since there's so many new millionaires and billionaires out here, the wealth opportunities are here. So I think financial services are still all coming out.
Was there anything else in terms of the challenges, especially when you were expanding the countries like China and so forth? Like, what were the main difficulties and challenges?
So when I was in China trying to get our license, our insurance license, it was really hard because I needed an interpreter.
Mm.
And I had a Chinese face. So they will tell you to your face that you should be ashamed.
Wow.
It was harder getting a license, right? You should be ashamed that you do not speak your mother tongue. And I told them, like, my mother's Cantonese.
Yeah.
I don't speak Mandarin. Right? They left 50 years ago. So it is, so you will face that.
Mm. No, it's really awesome. Just to hear your story, obviously, from start to beginning, how you've faced all this adversity and how you kept pushing, I think is really inspirational to other people, in terms of your background and story. I think we'll just start in terms of like, starting to wrap things up now. I just wanted to hear your thoughts about what the future holds for you, in regards to, obviously the company, and obviously you mentioned it's being acquired and so forth. But yeah, just yourself personally, and yeah, what you want to like, what the future holds for you.
So even though we're being acquired, I will probably be the CEO of the combined company. Um, they are a global firm. So CXA will not just be in Asia, but will go global. And the combined company is pretty powerful. So hopefully we keep building on that. So I see myself just building this and maybe other health related companies, because that's the space I just happen to be in. Mental health, wellness, chronic disease management, the way to pay for it, right? Can I get deeper and deeper? Can we go global? So that'll be fun. I see this for the foreseeable future.
Great. And to end it all, again, this is very general. It can be anything you want to say. I typically end the podcast on this, but do you have any advice for just young people just navigating their careers right now? Maybe they're whatever struggling, whether it be financially or mentally or whatever that may be. Do you just have any words of advice that's helped you along the way?
Yeah, so I would say early on a career, it's very hard to know what you want to do, what you like or don't like, but you know what you don't like.
Yeah.
So it's figuring out what you like and going deeper, right? Because once you like something and you enjoy something, then you're passionate about it. So how do you gain skills? To me, it's like physically working out, you're gaining muscles. When you're in work, you're really gaining skills, and skills are a muscle. And the thing to do when you're young is to gain as many skills as you can. And it's just like high school. Everything is temporary, right? Once you get out of high school, you wonder, why did you ever feel that way? So if you can see your early stage career that way, right, this too will pass. But get as many skills, figure out where your passion lies, and then continue, right? Because you will find a path. You will find a path. It's just figuring out what is the path. But spend all your time on learning to manage people, learning deeper technical skills, learning strategic skills, right? So that you can eventually find your path, right? No one has it. I never planned anything, but it just ended up being a great life. Only because I kept following what was interesting to me.
Gotcha. All right. Thanks. Thanks for your time, Rosaline. Really appreciated the conversation. If people listening and want to say hello or reach out, what's the best way they can do it?
Oh, they can find me on LinkedIn.
That's how I found you. So thanks for responding. Cool. All right. Thanks for that, Rosaline. And yeah, wish you all the best for the future. And yeah, hopefully we can meet each other in person at some point in the future. So yeah, really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Good luck. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed the episode. Feel free to listen to the other clips and episodes on the channel, and remember to subscribe and follow. Have a great day.